This woman was stabbed to death on a train by this man in Charlotte, North Carolina, and it has sparked national outrage and very, very big conversations. Because, well, this actually happened last month. The video showing the moments before the attack, they were just released, and it's now tying into a lot of what else we're seeing in the country. Before we get into that part, we need to break down what exactly we know about what happened. So the woman here is a Ukrainian refugee named Iryna Zarutska. She reportedly fled Kyiv in 2022, and on August 22nd, a little before 10 p.m., she boarded the Charlotte Area Transit System's Blue Line. She ended up sitting down right in front of the man who would end up taking her life, and you had a detective explaining in an affidavit what happened next, saying the train travels for approximately 4.5 minutes before the suspect pulls the knife from his pocket, unfolds the knife, pauses, then stands up and strikes at the victim 3 times. With him adding, blood visibly drips on the floor as the defendant walks away from the victim. The victim goes unresponsive shortly after the attack. There appears to be no interaction between the victim and defendant. And then as far as the killer, he is 34-year-old DeCarlos Brown. And a very big thing that's been highlighted here is that, according to reports, he has 14 previous court cases in just Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. And with those, you see things like in 2015, for example, he was sentenced to 6 years in prison for robbery with a dangerous weapon, breaking and entering, and larceny. You also have his mom telling reporters that he changed when he got home from prison, saying he started saying weird things. He started saying that he wasn't in his body, saying he became aggressive, and she was actually able to get an involuntary commitment order from the courts, and saying that when he underwent psychiatric monitoring for 2 weeks, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. But then ultimately, he ended up getting released, and he became so aggressive that she said she had no choice but to kick him out, leaving him homeless. And then as far as his most recent arrest, it was for misusing 911, where according to a January arrest record, he told responding officers that he believed someone gave him man-made material that was inside his body, controlling when he ate, walked, and talked. But despite all that, he was reportedly never hospitalized or jailed following that call, and his mom has actually blamed the court for allowing her son to be out in the community, knowing his previous arrests and mental health issues, and saying that Zarutska's death could have been prevented. But with all that said, as far as this guy, he's been charged with first-degree murder, and his lawyer said that he'll file a motion for an evaluation of his competency to stand trial because of his long history of mental health issues. And in the meantime, he's being held without bond, and his next court appearance is reportedly scheduled for September 19th. While we wait to see how this case progresses, including if he's deemed fit to stand trial, we also have to talk about how this case has been covered, or rather not covered, and how that's part of the backlash that we're seeing. Because you're seeing places like Ground News saying that as of recording, the killing has been covered far more by right-wing media outlets. Right? And then with that, you're seeing big social media accounts specifically accusing major national news outlets of not covering the situation because of the racial dynamics of the whole thing. Some then also contrasting it to the case of Daniel Penny. Right? Penny was that white guy who ended up choking to death a homeless man who was threatening passengers on a subway car in Manhattan in 2023. Right? And that ended up being a super high-profile case where a jury ultimately found him not guilty. So now you've got the situation where you have a black man killing a white woman, and you have accounts sharing lists of news outlets who hadn't yet covered the killing, and one adding, every single one of them wrote stories on Daniel Penny. Do you get it yet? You also had the likes of Benny Johnson writing, she ran from war in Ukraine, she came here for safety, and America failed her. Them adding, this wasn't random, this was preventable, there is a war on white people. Her blood is on the hands of a system that lets violent criminals roam while innocent people pay the price. If she were black and her killer white, the media would be rioting nonstop, but because she's white, they stay silent. This is evil and it's deliberate. With all that, one, you had some pushing back that he was actually concerned about a Ukrainian refugee, noting that he'd been previously revealed to have been paid indirectly by Russia as part of a secret political influence operation. Right, in that, in addition to a number of his other opinions that he shared. Two, you have many noting that right now, police have so far only said that the attack appeared to be random, noting that the authorities haven't given any evidence to suggest that this was racially motivated. Though also, I'll say with that, not all of the backlash has been about race. Right, a lot of the focus has been on the fact that the killer had been arrested so many times, reportedly had a known mental illness, and was still out on the streets. So then with that, you had people like Elon Musk calling on his followers to name and shame the DAs and judges who enable murder, rape, and robbery, but especially shame those who funded the campaigns of the DAs and judges. You then had Congressman Randy Fine taking it even further, saying he has plans to introduce legislation to hold judges accountable if they release violent offenders who go on to later reoffend, and adding, those 12-plus judges that released DeCarlos Brown Jr. should have their day in court too. Right? And then finally, you had some really explicitly making this an attack on the Democratic Party, or just Democrats in general. And some of those attacks came from the very top, with White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, who already recently called the Democratic Party a domestic extremist organization, now writing, the Democrat Party at every level, judges, politicians, academics, nonprofits, is organized around the defense and protection of the criminal, the monstrous, and the depraved. You then also had the Republican representing the area blaming what happened on decades of Democrat DAs and sheriffs putting their woke agendas above public safety, and adding, violent criminals commit crimes with impunity while families live in fear. And then finally, you had North Carolina Senate candidate Michael Whatley using the case to accuse his Democratic opponent Roy Cooper of being soft on crime, with him pointing to an executive order that Cooper signed in 2020 when he was governor that established a racial profiling task force and sought to reduce systemic racism, though it didn't call for the release of suspects. But then also, in addition to all that, this has raised some real questions, not only about Charlotte, but even I would say the nation's judicial system and the mechanisms in place for addressing mental health. Even this guy's mom said he should not have been out on the street, and maybe there are others. Last month, in fact, Charlotte police got into a shootout with a man described as acting erratically, and notably, the family had tried to get an involuntary commitment for that guy the day before, but a magistrate denied the request. And so then with all of that said, there is this question. Can we as a country move forward in a way where we address the issue, but also understand the number realities? Because one of the things we know is, just like nationwide, violent crime rates in Charlotte have actually been decreasing, at least as of July, when violent crime had decreased 25% compared to last year, and that was according to police. But that's also not to say that we can just dismiss the violent crimes that we just talked about. And while you have many experts saying there is no real evidence linking crime trends to leadership by either political party, that in no way means you shouldn't expect Trump to try to use this incident as a way to justify cleaning up the streets across the country, potentially by using the military. Because while he still doesn't seem to have a firm grasp on all the details, saying the stabbing happened this morning or last night, he has suggested something needs to be done.
I just give my love and hope to the family of the young woman who was stabbed this morning or last night in Charlotte by a madman, a lunatic. Just got up and started. It's right on the tape. Not really watchable because it's so horrible, but just viciously stabbed. She's just sitting there. So they're evil people. We have to be able to handle that. If we don't handle that, we don't have a country.
And then with all that, you also had an advisor telling Axios this is exactly what he's talking about, and it's going to be an issue he's going to highlight. This is not just about North Carolina. Other campaigns will deal with this. With him adding, crime is not a data thing. It's a feeling thing. It's not about whether you're a victim. It's about whether you feel you're a victim or not.